Hey guys, what's going on? This is Campo and welcome back to my channel. So this is the third war of Season 8 of Alliance War, and as you can see we have a slightly more favorable matchup than the last war. So we were really hoping to go in and win this to end our first week of Alliance War. I waited till the morning, kind of waiting to get cleared, and I decided to boost up and do 5 fights in a row. So that's what you're about to see now. And I ended up bringing a slightly different team. I normally bring Killmonger to help out Void and to potentially do the opening fights, but kind of the way my line looked today, there were some questionable placements. And, I decided to just do the Ghost Rider and Blade thing. Blade used to be on my defense, believe it or not, but in my new alliance, they don't need him there. So he is available. And, certainly if it's a villain, he's still one of the best. And just having a rank 5 champ instead of my rank 4 Killmonger is always good. So we've got the 20% boost, and I'm going to throw on Invulnerability just to kind of get through these first 3 fights. And I'm assuming this is Symbiote Spider-Man because he appears here a lot. But to my surprise and delight, it is Venom, who is super easy. I think he may even only be like a rank 3, to be honest, because he goes down super quick. But I brought Void because I was hoping to avoid a little bit of evasion and just kind of passively degen him. But being Venom on unblockable special 1, he's going to be throwing those special ones a ton, and he's very aggressive, so he's not really going to be building up the Furies. The only thing that makes Venom tricky is if he's getting to the special 2s a lot, and those are unblockable or doing extra damage. So the fact that it's on basically special 1 unblockable is sort of a questionable placement, but maybe they were thinking if you get tripped up he could really wreck you and all that. So anyway, he goes down, still have 100% health. Everything's going pretty well so far. Next up, we have a Science Champion. So, normally this would be like Killmonger Central, but, it's a rank 5 Blade. He should be able to handle himself. So I'm hoping it's kind of a MODOK so that Blade can just danger sense him to death, but it's actually Quake. Now, watch the way I start the fight. I don't block and bait the heavies. I kind of pretend it's Aspect of War, and I try to get a cheeky little intercept right there. And the main point of that is to just kind of avoid as many of those shock charges as possible. So I do a backdraft here, which works out, and I get the Bane transfer. Now I intercept her heavy with my special 2, which is, to make sure that the shock charges don't stun me. And with Blade, especially with the 20% boost, that special 2 is pretty much lights out for any character, especially when you have class advantage. So anyway, that's kind of how I play Quake on that node, because if you start blocking and she starts throwing heavies, then you're going to get more of those aftershock charges, and you could run into trouble with the Bane and everything. So anyway, I scouted ahead on this one and knew it was Medusa. And just as a pro tip, she is a little bit more tricky if you have to choose between node 24 and node 31, the mini boss. She's a little bit more tricky here because of the limber node. So eventually she is going to run out of parries, and at that point, you have to play more like boss style. But anyway, one thing I want to note is that I changed my mastery setup, and I'll get a little bit into that later because I finally unlocked Scouter Lens for my lane because I was getting tired of guessing. And the other thing I did is I maxed out Despair, and I got rid of Inequity and Resonate. The Resonate weakness debuffs were kind of working against me anytime I faced a Korg or a Domino because of the critical failure every time a weakness didn't place. And there's enough of those on my lane that I decided to change it to Despair. And as you can see, I don't have 2 Petrifies yet, and I was already completely canceling out the healing. So Despair will start doing work on regen nodes immediately, before you even get to the, full on Petrify and Fear of the Void. So I've made a couple mistakes. I tried to intercept a heavy, and I got clipped earlier, and then I canceled out her living strands with a special 2, which you're not really supposed to do. You should mostly use a special 1 for that. So I ended up taking a little bit of damage, but Void is a pretty beefy character, and I still had the invulnerable boost on, so everything kind of worked out there. So Anyway, the reason I brought Blade was just kind of like depending on how the first part of my lane went. I was thinking I might need him for this Killmonger, but because Void is still mostly full health here, I figured Void would still be the best because he can be passive and he can start swiping back. And I was interested to see how the Despair Mastery would work on this node as well, because it didn't really come into play too much in the last node. But anyway, I'm trying not to hit into him too much when he has the reverberation. I get my first petrify. So as you can see, like willpower is healing him a little bit, but every time I place a new debuff, it's going to continue to make that number for willpower go down and eventually reverse. So now, as you can see, I have 4 debuffs and I have 1 petrify, and he's only healing for 10 with the willpower. And now I have 2 petrify, and that little number, the 116 that's ticking, that is Despair already reversing the healing. So once you get 2 petrify, as you stack up the debuffs, the Despair Mastery is already going to start reversing the healing from both the buffet node and from willpower. So at this point, I have complete reversal because I have another petrify, and I am taking a little bit of damage from the reverberation, but it's really cool. As I start swiping back, you're going to see some massive numbers from the heal reversal. So let's just check this out. Let's see what happens when I swipe back here. Wow, 30k. So I guess I was kind of missing out by not having the Despair Mastery. I knew that it would help me a lot, but if I had to choose between weakness, resonate, or Despair, I think Despair is going to help me out in the long run. So this was another reason I brought Blade, was to take care of this Mystic. So if it was Morningstar, I did technically have Ghost Rider for bleed immune. If it was Mephisto, I had Void, but since I didn't see any persistent charges, I assumed it was either Magic or Dormammu. And Dormammu was also the boss, so I actually was a little bit surprised that it was him. I'm actually not the best Dormammu fighter. I'm not really good at like the shallow dashing back to avoid dexterity. So I'm trying to just kind of like block the first hit of his special one and then swipe back to not get dexterity. I'm just sort of like comboing him really slow, just kind of like hoping he throws special ones. And I get clipped there. That wasn't great. Again, I'm just kind of hoping that I can get him down with that special 2, but it doesn't quite get there. Unfortunately, I have dexterity now. I get the degeneration. So, even with Danger Sense, Blade can get the degen. And, the fact that Dormammu doesn't bleed and you don't really have any power control measures with Blade, like, I know that he has Danger Sense, but without Stark Enhanced, I always find Dormammu a little tricky, at least the way I play. I need to work on my skill a little bit there. But nonetheless, I was able to get him down, and very glad I had Blade because that could have been a little sketchy with Void. So now this is where the Scouter Lens comes into play. I took a little break to get my energy back together, and I use Scouter Lens mostly because I see these skill champions, and I get really confused if I should use someone like Void or Blade or something like that. So I looked ahead, and this is Agent Venom. So I put a 10% boost on and also a special boost because I have to get through Arc Overload somehow. And I just decided Void can do this fight, but it's a little risky because all of your debuffs are getting shrugged off. So my plan is to play like super aggressive. Sometimes you can get in after those parries. So all of a sudden, like I'm trying to be way too aggressive. I'm trying to like get through his tenacity when I really shouldn't be playing that way. So those were the big mistakes I made right at the beginning. Fortunately, Blade can regen a little bit, but my goal is to kind of just like get to special 2s. And since I have the boosts on, those should be enough to kind of out damage the regen. And then I was also thinking that because I have Despair, that all the bleeds will help me a little bit. So if you notice, this is something that a lot of people do, which is a little questionable. They put suicides on him so that he's a little bit more attack on this node, and they assume that you will shrug off the debuffs and all that. but because of recoil, it actually really works not in his favor. The other thing to note about fighting Agent Venom, I'm kind of skipping around here, is when he throws a special one, it is actually possible to evade almost all of it. You basically just wait for the bullets to like hit you, and then like as soon as the first bullet hits you, you kind of swipe back. So I'm taking so many hits. Like thank God Blade has the regen because I'm really not playing well. The fight's halfway over, and I can see that I'm pretty much, if I stay the course, he's gonna go down. So I'm just trying to make sure I don't make any more mistakes and keep getting those special twos off. The special two of him is pretty easy to evade. But at this point, I'm just trying to be conservative, like block and bait the heavies. But again, like this isn't really a great example of playing, but I think it is a pretty good example of strategizing, because I had to make a decision, like was I going to try to do Void and just hope that my luck worked out, or do I do Blade? But anyway, that's going to do it for this war. I'm really glad I changed my Mastery setup, really glad I brought Blade, really good decision making, and we did end up winning this war. And that's all I got for today. So thanks for checking it out, and I'll catch you guys next time. Thanks.